Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. In this video, we are going to react to the 7 most powerful nuclear explosions caught on camera. I find nuclear explosions, nuclear reactors, anything to do with nuclear really interesting. You know, nuclear weapons are probably humanity's most powerful weapons, unless there's something secret, you know, in Area 51. As far as we're aware, nukes are probably the most powerful thing we have. They are just immensely powerful. And, you know, because of the strength of them, you can't really just on the whim blow one up. You know, you have to plan it often months and years in advance, find somewhere very, very secluded, away from all forms of life, or at least as much life as possible, because, you know, not only does the blast cause damage, but then you have the radioactive fallout to think about as well. So there's not been many. I think there's probably, in terms of human history, there's probably been less than 20 total explosions. So yeah, it's quite rare that we get to see, you know, how big these blasts can get on camera. So yeah, this video is going to be super cool.
This device could instantly set the entire planet on fire. At least that was exactly what its makers were afraid of. But even despite these suspicions, right? On July 16th, 1945, they unleashed the nuclear demon.
Yeah, definitely Oppenheimer. Look at the size of that mushroom cloud, man.
The first detonation of an atomic bomb named Trinity was so powerful that a huge fiery mushroom cloud higher than Everest rose above the New Mexico desert. And since the worst fears were not confirmed and all hell didn't break loose, humans decided that they'd tamed the nuclear demon. But that was only an illusion. In this video, you'll find out, how did an underground explosion affect outer space? What atomic test was so powerful that it was dubbed a second Hiroshima? And most importantly, what nuclear test turned out to be exceptionally destructive to the great surprise of even military services?
Let's go.
Bright and luminous Las Vegas dazzled its guests even 75 years ago. But just 100 kilometers away, there was the Nevada test site where flashes of light could literally make you go blind. Starting from the 50s, the military conducted around 1,000 nuclear tests there. In 1957, they thought it was time to try something new, to blow up underground layers of Earth. As part of the Pascal A test, in a mine at a depth of 150 meters, they installed a bomb weighing just 29 kilograms and containing less than a kilogram of TNT. By military standards, that's a pretty small thing. Scientists expected that all the explosion energy would stay in the mine tunnel, but the nuclear demon wasn't going to be cooped up. A pillar of flame dozens of meters high burst out of the ground. It happened because, for some reason, the real power of the bomb was 55 tons. In other words, 50,000 times greater than the developers had predicted. That's like intending to celebrate the 4th of July by setting off a firecracker and watching it destroy the whole city. But even after such a vicious prank pulled by the nuclear genie, the military insisted on a retest that was called Pascal B. Only this time, the mine exit was sealed with an iron 90-kilogram cap.
Man, this is such a... because that energy's got to go somewhere. Like, I suppose that's why they do experiments, but it just seems like a bad idea, doesn't it?
One would definitely withstand any blast wave. No need to worry. That's what scientists thought, and they were wrong. The explosion struck the cap with a yield of 300 tons and knocked it out at an unbelievable speed of 66 kilometers per second. This is 6 times higher than the escape velocity of the Apollo program rockets launched a decade later. Actually, that cap could have become the first object to travel into space on behalf of the US in 1957. But of course, it just probably vanished into the atmosphere. Meanwhile, the released nuclear demon was only warming up on American soil. This piece of paradise is Bikini Atoll in the Marshall Islands, although only a madman would want to spend a vacation there in the late 40s. That's because the U.S. military carried out almost 24 devastating nuclear tests in this region. In July 1946, as a part of the Baker nuclear test, a fleet of 90 target ships was assembled off Bikini Atoll to study the consequences of an atomic blast at sea.
The people working on nukes back then, were they aware of how, toxic, and radioactive uranium is? Because they're not wearing hazmat suits or anything like that. Like, did they suffer any health effects, like in ramifications, because of how close they were to the radioactive material? Probably. Yeah, because they just seem to be handling it so casually.
The bomb was attached to the bottom of a landing ship and lowered to a depth of 27 meters. The explosive yield of 3 kilotons blew the ship into atoms and created a water column as high as 2.5 Burj Khalifa towers. And when hundreds of tons of water collapsed down, they triggered a tsunami that claimed 9 target ships. However, the rest of them were even less fortunate. The nuclear demon showered so much radiation on the remaining fleet that all the ships had to be sunk. But the military guys were rather excited. 6 years later, on the neighboring Eniwetok Atoll, they built an evil device able to greatly increase the nuclear demon's power. They tested it on November 1st, 1952. The test, codenamed Ivy Mike, released 10.5 megatons of destructive energy, which equals 400 Baker tests. That was the first American thermonuclear bomb in history, in which the energy that appears as a result of nuclear decay sources fusion and creates even more destructive and deadly force. That was why the mushroom cloud of the Ivy Mike boiled up to 37 kilometers into the skies, which is nearly as high as 2 Manhattan Islands. The monstrous power almost literally evaporated the atoll and contaminated the surrounding area 56 kilometers in diameter with nuclear fallout. The military sent 3 planes to the dangerous cloud to get air samples for further studies.
Man, like, what about the marine life? The fish and stuff like that nearby. It's like these tests, they give us a lot of info, but it's got to be terrible for the environment.
One of them never returned. The nuclear demon devoured Captain Jimmy Robinson without a trace. The pilot is still considered missing. The other planes came back to the base with samples that revealed to the world 2 new chemical elements, einsteinium and fermium. In the meantime, another nuclear demon was gaining strength halfway around the globe, and this one was much more dangerous. Looks like a lunar landscape. However, this place is situated here on Earth. To be more precise, that's the Semipalatinsk test site in Kazakstan, a former Soviet republic. In 1955, the Soviet military decided to demonstrate their total destructive supremacy to the world with the help of their RDS-37 hydrogen bomb.
Do you think that nukes are still the most powerful weapons we have, or do you think like the US government, maybe Russia, maybe other governments around the world have developed something even more powerful? What do you guys think?
On the appointed day, a Tupolev Tu-16 bomber took it to the height of 12 kilometers above the ground, when suddenly the radar equipment failed and the sky became cloudy. The Soviets first wanted to randomly drop the bomb somewhere in the mountains, but changed their minds at the last minute. That's why Major Fyodor Golovashko had to make a first-ever emergency landing with a fully armed thermonuclear bomb aboard. Ignoring all the bad omens, the military anyway set off RDS-37 2 days later. The mushroom cloud rose 12 kilometers above the ground. This is higher than most passenger liners can get. And although that was a medium-power explosion with a yield of 1.6 megatons, the shockwave unexpectedly damaged buildings within 200 kilometers. the Soviets were already imagining how their nuclear demon would wipe all large American cities along with suburbs off the face of the earth. But even that amount of power didn't seem to satisfy them. On October 30th, 1961, on the Arctic island of Novaya Zemlya, a Tupolev Tu-95 bomber took off carrying the most powerful bomb in history, the 27-ton Tsar Bomba. If the plane dropped it like usual, it would simply have no time to fly a safe distance away and would have been ripped apart by the thermonuclear demon.
Man, we've got to be so careful with these things. Like, we cannot allow a war between the US and Iran to start because they're both nuclear powers. Iran's, one of Iran's biggest allies is Russia, another nuclear power. If this goes nuclear, and it only takes one nuke to set the chain off, it's going to be the end of us, of humanity, really. So, yeah, we need to be careful here because, yeah, these things, man, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. If you set one off,
give the pilots a head start. The Tsar Bomba was dropped on a parachute, and when it descended to 4 kilometers above the ground, a new sun erupted over Novaya Zemlya. The Tsar Bomba yielded around 58 megatons, an absolute record. It was 4 times more powerful than any warhead before or after it. The blast could be seen even in Greenland or Alaska, 1,000 kilometers away from the location.
Insane.
The Tsar mushroom reached the height of 65 kilometers and covered more than half the distance separating our planet's surface from outer space. And the seismic wave produced by the blast circled our planet 3 times. If the Soviets had Tsar bombed the west coast of the United States, this would have evaporated the region's biggest cities and caused massive earthquakes all around the country. But the Americans weren't intimidated by the threat since they had already pumped steroids into their own nuclear beast. On March 1st, 1954, under Operation Castle, the U.S. military carried out the notorious Castle Bravo nuclear test that left behind well-known consequences. Scientists had estimated that the power of the device would equal 6 megatons, no more than that. But the thermonuclear demon had other plans. The Castle Bravo detonation released more than twice as much energy, 15 megatons, unprecedented for the U.S. That's because lithium deuteride, which was supposed to slow down the thermonuclear reaction, suddenly fueled it. As a result, the fireball of Castle Bravo spread more than 7 kilometers around. This death circle could easily fit 2.5 Golden Gate bridges. The mushroom cloud rose 40 kilometers up and 100 kilometers wide. But the worst thing was that the Castle Bravo explosion defaced vast coral reefs, and the fallout escaped way beyond the test area. Without knowing it, 23 Japanese fishermen aboard the Daigo Fukuryu Maru fishing boat became victims of the test. They were diagnosed with radiation poisoning. As a result, one of them died, and the others spent the rest of their lives suffering from it. Journalists immediately labeled the Castle Bravo blast a second Hiroshima, and the United States had to pay $15 million of compensation to the Japanese government. Despite this, just 2 months after the nuclear disaster, the military conducted the Castle Yankee test on the same atolls.
God, it's just like a never-ending sort of like, oh, they did this, so now we have to develop something bigger. And then the other side does the same, and then it just constantly, it's like, keeping up with the other side. It's like, at what cost? At what cost? Like those Japanese sailors, collateral damage just caught in the middle. And it's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. It might already have happened and been kept under wraps.
With the same atomic bomb, the explosion yield matched that of Castle Bravo, 13.5 megatons. And this time, the thermonuclear demon didn't stop in the Pacific Ocean only. In just 4 days, radioactive fallout hit Mexico and the western United States. Speaking of the Marshall Islands, even 65 years after the tests, measurements of plutonium in the environment are 1,000 times higher than those of the Chernobyl power plant.
Crazy.
The nuclear weapon states realized there was no way to tame this beast. Our planet was at risk even without a fully fledged nuclear war. Anti-nuclear protests took place all around the world. And finally, in 1963, the US, the UK, and the USSR signed a treaty prohibiting all test detonations of nukes on the surface. This treaty remains in force. And yet, studying archives of the atomic age, apart from records dedicated to dangerous, destructive tests, we can also find downright ridiculous chronicles. Check this video. 5 U.S. Army officers are standing right in the epicenter of nuclear testing.
Why?
Do you think the blast wave is about to blow them to pieces? You'll be surprised. The thing is, a bomb yielding only 2 kilotons of explosive energy was set off 5.6 kilometers above the ground. The layer of the atmosphere protected the officers from any harmful effects except for the flash.
Mate, I wouldn't risk it. I wouldn't risk it. I'm sorry, I'd be miles away.
If nuclear tests weren't banned, would you agree to participate in such a photo shoot?
Absolutely not. Would you? Gosh, nuclear weapons, they fill me both with awe and also a bit with fear, just because, you know, you can't really. I used to trust, like a long time ago, I used to trust that our politicians really had our best interests at heart, you know, that they were the smartest people that, you know, that were available, you know, that they were the most just and righteous, etc. But as soon as I kind of hit my, you know, late teens, early 20s, these people, you know, they're just power hungry ultimately. And, you know, can we trust these people with weapons of this power? I just, you know, it's scary. Ideally, we would completely disarm from nuclear weapons. Nobody would have them. And then the risk of a war would be massively reduced. I mean, it would be zero if all countries truly got rid of all their nukes, but you can't trust that every country would do that. Even our own, there would probably be some kept in a secret location just in case. And you can understand why they would do that, because they would be scared that other countries would also keep some just in case. So I think the threat of nuclear war is always going to be there, unfortunately, unless we kind of develop some kind of utopia society, which I don't know if we ever will. What do you guys think? Like, should we get rid of nukes? I would love to, but I just don't know if it's possible. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoy my videos, please help me out by liking and subscribing.